Today, expensive VSTs are all over the music industry. While a lot of pros and YouTubers can afford to use expensive software, not everybody has $500 to drop on Omnisphere or Keyscape. In this video, I want to break down 7 ways you can mess around with stock sounds and free VSTs to achieve high quality instrumentation without emptying your wallet. The first one is a pretty obvious one, that's reverb and delay. These two things can immediately add depth to a flat sound. You can also mess around with different reverb plugins and play with the attack time and other modulation settings in your reverb effect and achieve some pretty interesting sounds. And for delay, you can mess around with different rhythms and ping-ponging and all sorts of things. They're just a really great way to add space to your sound. Number 2 is filters. So that's EQ and other auto filters that come in every DAW. You can soften up sounds by taking out the high end. Sometimes stock presets have really resonant areas, so you can take some volume out of those areas with EQ. You can also mess with other plugins like Fuzwa and auto filter to get some pretty interesting results. And finally, you can also add automation to those filters to make the sound a little bit more unique. That's the second thing, filters and EQ. So number 3 is play with your actual MIDI. So sometimes the sound itself might not be your main problem. What I mean by playing with your MIDI is change the velocity of your notes and shift around your notes to get different sound. I like to shift my notes around and put them off key a little bit to make them sound like live instruments. And then for velocity, you can change around the velocities to get either a harsh or soft sound. Sometimes you just need to make that small adjustment in the velocity meter to get a way better preset sound. So that's number 3. Number 4 is modulation. This would include things like chorus effects, flangers, phasers. These are great effects to start with to just get a sound to sound totally different. The good thing about these is most DAWs come with native versions of these plugins. They're also a great way to add dynamics, so different swelling and cool distortion effects, and you can get some pretty cool results while messing around with some of these plugins. Another thing I should mention is at first you're not going to know what every knob does in these plugins, but the important thing is that you mess around with each setting, try to get some new results, experiment, and that's where ideas come from in the long run. Number 5 is try out new free VSTs and plugins. You don't need to feel weighed down by expensive VSTs and other expensive mixing and FX plugins. Over the years that I've been producing, I found a number of free gems online for free VSTs and plugins. There are already quite a few videos on YouTube that talk about free plugins, but some of my favorites are Tyrell N6, which is a synth, and Isotope Vinyl, which is a tape saturation and vinyl plugin. Number 6 is play with the sound directly. Most DAWs have native synthesizers with different presets, so if you open up those presets, you can actually manipulate the synth itself to get a different sound. Sometimes when I'm working with a native synth preset, there might be some sort of weird element to the sound. If I open up the synthesizer for that preset, I can actually change around some of the settings, whether it's attack or release or other aspects like that, to change the sound and morph it into something that I can work with. And lastly is mess with your sounds like they are samples. Well, a great way to make sounds sound cooler is to bounce them out and then chop them up, and then you can sample them like they are a sample. And this is a great way of taking a boring sound and making it sound cool. Kyle Stenberger does a great tutorial on how to make samples like Q beats, so I really recommend that. And he shows some great techniques and how you can manipulate an exported sound to sound a little bit more interesting. So that's all 7 ways I came up with to replace expensive VSTs. The other thing I want to say is that expensive VSTs don't solve your problems. A lot of the time, your problem is either in the mixing or directly in the music itself. So both learning music theory and mixing technique is so important, and it goes far beyond just having an expensive VST from the start. So while it can be a challenge to have to stick with stock VSTs a lot, in the end it should be worth it, because if you can make something good with a stock VST, once you actually get to buying Omnisphere and Keyscape, your melodies will be so much better because you learned how to make great melodies with limited resources. That's it for this week. Hope you guys enjoyed this short video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next Friday.